before the Prohibition started, there was anywhere predicted, they say, between 600 to like 1,300 breweries in the U.S. The active breweries dwindled to 100 after the Prohibition, which, you know, when you think about, that's a huge, huge decrease. But again, 13 years, I can't actually believe that 100 of them survived. So let's dive into those stories first. Most of them did not bootleg. Not gonna say all of them, but most of them did not jump down that. Though Prohibition is credited with, you know, the organized crime movement that actually happened only because of Prohibition happening and not having enough resources and the cops getting like completely overtaken because the crime was so well organized that they couldn't handle it. That's a fun fact in its own, but that is where we're at. Some of the big breweries that did survive are going to be kind of your bigger names. We've talked about them before. You got Coors, you got Miller's, you got Anheuser-Busch, you got old PBR, and they all have fun things that they did to actually survive. So, of course, they had to resort to different business models. This wasn't going to be as easy squeezy, and they're just like bootlegging. No. They had to get real creative. A lot of the breweries ended up in kind of the dairy market. And these are going to be your northern breweries. We'll get to why that's important later, but they're going to be your breweries that are up north. They started investing in dairy. They started investing in cattle. They had the machinery for it. So, of course, they're looking for business models. They can reuse their machinery and do everything that they need to do. They can do the pasteurization, and the part that I totally overlooked because I don't know a ton about dairy, but it makes sense. You can use the brewing machinery for it. The refrigeration. Like, duh. But I didn't think about it, and I was like, of course, they have this mass amount of refrigeration to keep this stuff cold. Breweries often tend to have a big source of, refrigeration available at their disposal. So the brewery that actually succeeded the most in the ice cream department is Yuengling. They started doing this in about 1920, went to 1931, I believe. Yep. Yeah, they were like, we're not gonna cry over spilt beer. We're going to make ice cream. Good for them. Hee hee ha ha. They actually kept this going until 1985. Which is pretty impressive. They expanded a ton of times over the year. They grew the farm, they grew the ice cream. They did sunset it in 1985, like I said. They brought it back in 2014 because they wanted to give all of us loving folks 2 big scoops of nostalgia here. PBR also ended up going down this dairy route, and they produced cheese called Pabst-It. It was a wheat-based cheddar product that was easily digestible, it was healthy, and of course it was delicious. And it's available in cheddar, Swiss, and pimento. As I'm reading this, I was like, holy crap. Did Pabst give us Velveeta cheese? Because Velveeta cheese is delicious. Total guilty pleasure. I'm not ashamed to admit it. They actually sold over 8 million pounds of this cheese in a 13-year span, which is a lot of cheese. As I stated, it's not Velveeta. I got really excited thinking it was Velveeta. It is not Velveeta. Kraft, who actually purchased Velveeta, in return sued PBR for basically copyright patent infringement on the cheese, how they process it. The lawsuit, I can add the link in. It's actually really funny how like specific and nitpicky they got with all the words, but that's what they did. And they let them keep making the cheese, but they did make them pay a royalty of 1/8 of a cent per pound in royalties. Pabst ended up selling completely over into Kraft. So like maybe you never know. Maybe they adjusted the recipe a little bit, and Pabst did actually give us what Velveeta is now. Hand in hand, walking through history. See how that is? There is some like ebb and flow stories here of like, did Pabst really just survive on this 8 million pounds of block cheese that they sold? Probably not. In the 1800s, they actually purchased hundreds and hundreds of properties in plots of land to build the beer gardens and restaurants. This is all over. They also had multiple hotels, Milwaukee's first skyscraper, and a Wisconsin resort. Good old cheese coming back again. So by 1893, 20% of the Pabst Brewing Company assets were reportedly in real estate as it is. So by 1910, the family owned more than 400 plots in 187 cities. So during the Prohibition, they were also able to wheel off a dedicated real estate company to either rent or sell those plots of land to. They even leased some of their land, of their core brewing space, to Harley Davidson. So it's probably not just the cheese that they survived on. They kind of had a little back pocket of real estate going on, and we all know real estate has done a lot of people really good. So not necessarily just cheese, but that is how Pabst survived the Prohibition. If you want to dive deeper into the historical reasons the southern breweries didn't do as well as the northern breweries during the Prohibition, click this video here and we'll get into it.